Hello, everybody. Welcome to one more episode of a Real AI Now podcast brought to you by Two Impulse. Today, we have a very special guest, Kevin Surace. He is a Silicon Valley innovator. He's a person that disrupted the AI space for the past decades. He has 94 worldwide patents, and he's recognized as the father of the virtual assistant. And so virtual assistant things like Siri and Alexa. So Kevin is also a Broadway and film creator and producer. So today we're going to talk about AI in the film industry. So welcome, Kevin. Good to have you.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Paulo. We'll have fun with what's really happening in AI and Gen AI and how it's going to impact so much content creation.
Cool. I'm looking forward to our conversation. So I'll start right away. How is AI transforming the creative process in filmmaking? And
Well,
how is
look,
that changing the industry in general?
yeah, look, it's not doing too much now, but it's about to. We've worked for the last several years on text, and you've got things like ChatGPT, and then individual images like DALL-E 3 and Mid-Journey and Stable Diffusion and such. And now people are going, if I can do one frame, I can do the second frame and the third frame, and then I can do 24 frames a second in the case of film like Hollywood.
Right.
And if I can do that, I could start to generate some really interesting things. And some people have seen some of this work from a lot of companies now. Pika, Sora is a model that's been worked on by OpenAI, and there are several other models. But the basic idea of this technology, if I can get into the technology a little bit,
Yeah.
is they're mostly based on a diffusion model. And diffusion model literally starts with noise, and it starts to slowly form a picture. And eventually you get an image. And then you go to the next frame and you say, learning from that frame, what might have happened temporally or spatially, right, over time or in space, to change that image based on other things we've learned from, right? And so you build frame by frame. Now that's very, very different and similar to the way we do it in Hollywood today. What we do in Hollywood is we set up a camera and we take a picture frame by frame. We'll take 24 frames a second, typically for a major film. And we're building that based on the light we see coming into the lens. Now, it's been done that way, since George Eastman invented, photography and ultimately film. And I'm actually in Rochester, New York right now, and the George Eastman house is right down the street. So film was invented here, right? Motion picture film. And that was all just a series of pictures. That's what it is, motion picture, moving pictures. Okay. So then you have to go back a little ways, if we can go into history, and say, why does Hollywood exist? Hollywood exists and got started in the really late 1800s and early 1900s because you needed a place with good weather that you could go and film outside and film on big, huge sound stages inside. Because I actually had to recreate environments. If I want to put you on the moon, or on Mars, I would recreate the environment of Mars, whatever that might look like, and inside a soundstage, put you there, right?
Yeah.
Huge sound stages, if you've ever seen them, if you've been to Hollywood. They're these humongous buildings. And they are isolated from the outside, and they are very quiet inside, and you could film and shoot and do audio and everything else there. And then, of course, you could have a replica of New York City sitting outside, and those same blocks have been used in so many films and such. Because we needed the actual physical presence of those things to put people in front of them so that we could shoot them and believe they're in New York City or believe they're on Mars. What happens when I don't need any of that? I don't need any of it. Now, people are going to say, well, we've had CGI for a while. We have had CGI for 20 years, and it can create, and it has been creating really interesting things that were not creatable otherwise, right? A ship flying through space instead of the old way to do it, right? At a very high cost, huge teams, very high cost, literally hard coding in, literally with code, the movement of a ship, let's say, right? and very accurately drawing that ship, literally drawing it, and creating a photorealistic vision of it flying through space, let's say, or a person on Mars or whatever. So over the last certainly decade or two, we've had this, computer generated imagery
Right.
that we could do.
Right.
But the minute you said CGI to someone in Hollywood, they go, well, there's another $50 million or 40 million or 30 million. It's big numbers. These are big
Right.
numbers. You don't do it in your basement. Basement Bob isn't
No,
doing
because
it.
this requires very skilled people and
Very, very skilled
lots
artisans.
of computational resources, and so
All the above. All
you
the
kind
above.
of say, I want to move the ship from A to B in this virtual
Right.
space. So, and you program that, and then you have to have the computer rendering every single
Frame by frame.
frame by frame, every single picture of that.
That's right.
And that takes a long time, and it takes very skilled artists, digital, this kind of artists.
That's right. When they did that movie with the tiger, I can't remember the name of it now, but
Lion King
this,
or
no, with the tiger. It was
Tiger. Okay.
It was the tiger on the boat where the kid was out there with a tiger on a boat. Very famous movie about 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
That was also done by really amazing CGI specialists. And the bulk of the cost of that movie, I don't know, call it 100 million. It might be 50 or 60 million went into creating that tiger. An immense amount of effort to create every little hair on that tiger moving with the wind and moving. And it's so much so it's indistinguishable from a real tiger. What happens when everything I just described, including actors, can now be created by AI for 1/1,000,000th the cost?
Okay.
Say it again. 1/1,000,000th the cost.
Right.
What happens? What happens? Now,
But
we have a little bit of an example of this, Paulo, right here. You are a podcaster. Well, it's sponsored by your company, but here you are podcasting, broadcasting to 50 people, 500 people, 5 million people, could be 5 billion people. Doesn't cost you any more for 5 billion people to watch your show. No. But if this was 20 years ago and you wanted even 100,000 to hear your show or watch your show, but even to hear it, you would have probably had to own a radio station because they weren't going to give you the time to do what you want to do every week.
Or a TV station.
A radio station. Right. You needed millions of dollars and antennas and all kinds of things to broadcast, right?
Yeah.
And now you can broadcast for, well, you need a gaming chair and some headphones, right? So
yeah. And a good internet connection.
And a good internet connection. But basically, you can broadcast for a few $100s, right? Down from maybe $10 million. So we have seen these kinds of market transformations before. That has led us to thousands, maybe millions of podcasters now, which is really interesting and fun and really amazing content. On the other hand, it's probably made the radio station less interesting to go and say, I want to get on the radio station to broadcast to, a few thousand listeners out there when I could just do it right here. Right.
Right. And if you talk about, I don't know, talk shows on TV, well, that made it also, because this is also a video podcast, and that so
a TV time was a fortune.
Yeah,
TV time was a fortune. It was whatever, $1,000, $10,000 a minute or something, right?
And now, instead of people watching TV, they'll probably also watch a little TV, but they'll watch less TV and they'll watch podcasts, or they listen to podcasts instead of radio. Right. Yeah. And I was talking to a colleague of mine the other day about this. And so there is, so this, at least I think that, or at least we think that, this could create the kind of using AI to create films. Let's say you start using AI to create, to do the whole production of the movie, including actors and CGI and everything. This will create a new class of entertainment.
Or it's the same class of entertainment, but a new class of entertainers.
Yes.
Creators. It's a creator economy.
It's a bit like going from theater to motion picture, right? And then you have motion picture with physical actors and with actual with actual physical
Sure, sure, sure,
setting.
sure.
And then but you also have animated films. That's
We do.
also a huge industry that makes
Yeah.
billions and billions of dollars.
Anime out of Japan, which has been around for whatever 30 years, 40 years, is a huge multi-billion dollar business. There's no actors there. Now they still have actors voicing it, which you don't really need anymore. But
Yeah.
but aside from that, mostly people don't even know who the actors voicing those things are. And obviously we've had cartoon-like things that are three-dimensional, like Shrek. That Shrek doesn't actually exist. Everybody knows.
No.
I hope that there's no actual Shrek, right? And yeah, you can go and watch Shrek and see this character really interact with the other characters, even though there was no Shrek and no one was filmed to do that. So we do have examples of things where computers generated all our characters. However, we always knew they were cartoonish.
Right. But now they'll look like humans.
It will look better than you and I look today.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and that's so you probably are going into the direction of having virtual movie stars, and this is
no question. But we have virtual movie stars, Shrek. We've had other virtual movie stars. Bugs Bunny, Mickey Mouse is a virtual movie star. Yeah. There is no actual mouse that is Mickey, right? Yet Mickey Mouse was a movie star back in whatever, the 30s or 40s or something, right? This is a fascinating thing. So we as a society have already accepted the fact that we have movie stars that don't exist. Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, many of the characters that exist in the Disney kingdom, weren't even acted by, sort of real actors. The Little Mermaid was a cartoon before they did the real action version. It was a cartoon 35, 40 years ago. So we've had them and we're okay with that. We love the Little Mermaid. We love Ariel. We know her name. Ariel didn't exist. She was drawn at the time, right? With crayons. So let's look at where this goes. Today, a major Hollywood film will employ 300 on a low end, but often 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 people to make that film in lots of different organizations. Some of them are only employed for 2 or 3 months at a time, but that's sort of what it takes. And it may take 6 months of filming, and it may take a year of editing and post-production. So we're talking about a lot of jobs. Right. And then you say, well, what are those jobs? Well, there are a lot of jobs in Hollywood that are, sort of in front of the camera that people think about, but there's also a lot of jobs that are completely behind the camera, right? And so obviously, obviously you have the obvious ones, right? Like the director. And the director might still want to direct a film. So you might still have a director. You got producers who fund films and hire the key personnel and decide that it's going to happen. You got screenwriters. Now, screenwriters, a little more risky here because we've already got large language models that certainly can begin to write scenes in a film quite well. And I've got examples where I've done that, right? Cinematographer, director of photography, all the people on camera. What happens if I'm not taking any light into a camera? Like there are no camera people in Shrek. No camera people in Little Mermaid. Why? Because there were none. It's a cartoon. So there's no camera people when AI is generating all this content, right? Production designer. Well, the director may have a view of what he wants the production to be. Maybe they'll have a production designer next to them for a bit of time. But basically, AI is going to go make anything you want as soon as you type it in the computer. Say, no, I want this a little more purple. Boom, I want this a little more this way. An editor, maybe you'll have an editor because maybe you'll want to stitch a lot of scenes together, but there'll be 99% less editing than there's been. How about all those CGI people, those CGI artists, which are often hundreds in a film? Probably don't need to do that kind of work, right? AI is going to generate that for us. There are composers that generate all the musical score, might still use them, but of course AI is already highly generating musical scores today. It's mixing, it's doing sound design. Visual effects supervisor, probably not. There aren't visual effects in the same way, right? It's really just the director's vision. Assistant directors, stunt coordinators, costumes, don't need it. I can put any costume on anyone, whether they were live or not live today. We can scan that body and change their clothing right now with no costume department needed. I don't need to physically make costumes. So what happens if I don't physically need to make anything. I literally don't physically need to make anything because there's no manifestation of this in the physical world, right? Just like that ship flying through space, it never existed physically in modern times anyway, in the last 10 or 20 years. Now the entire set doesn't exist physically. Even the actors don't exist physically. And the big difference is instead of $100 million for a major film, it costs about $100 to make a major film if you did it from your desk. If you did it from your desk, not hiring any of those people.
Right.
Not talking about the quality. And what people are going to say is, oh, that'll be a terrible quality film. But I don't know. If this was 20 years ago and I said 100,000 people are going to have podcasts, they're going to be broadcasting themselves, you're going to say, well, the quality's all going to be terrible. That didn't turn out to be true.
Not all.
No, not all.
There's pretty good podcasts out there. Yeah.
That's right. There's excellent podcasts out there that might have never gotten time on the radio or TV.
Yeah.
And so we can't say it'll all be bad.
And it actually grew. That actually were given the chance to grow and kind of became better and better over time. So that there are new opportunities because of this.
Right.
For people who wouldn't have had them if it weren't for the technology.
So imagine a world where anyone can create a movie for about $100. Now, if you're in Hollywood, how does this impact you? First of all, there'll be really interesting and good-looking content coming from Paulo, or me or anyone, right? Stories aside. Second thing is, I really don't need a soundstage. What would I do with it? How would I decorate it? Why would I decorate it? I can take live people and put them anywhere, or I can take no live people. I don't need live people at all. I will just generate the characters.
You can create actors.
Exactly. So when we look at the budget of a major film today, about 20 to 40% of that budget was called above the line. And above the line is actors and primarily directors, producers, screenwriters. That's about it, right? The rest is below the line. And that's 60 to 80%. And that's production and post-production expenses, crew expenses, crew salaries, equipment rental, lunches for everybody. It's all that stuff, right? I don't need a crew. I'm never filming anything. I have no crew. I have no lunches. I have no one behind cameras. That entire 60, 80%, even if you were making this in Hollywood, would pretty much go away, and those jobs go away. I don't need them. It isn't that they're wonderful people. I'm not making a comment on how good they are at their job. I'm saying AI does this work for us at the touch of a button, right? And when we look at the above the line costs, if I really wanted to do something at a low cost, I'd say, why would I hire an actor at all? I don't need the union or the actor or anyone, actually. I will just generate someone, as many characters as I want in AI. And I will, and they'll have their own name called Jimmy. And Jimmy can become a star in their own right because I can use Jimmy over and over again in lots of different films and lots of different content and shorts. And I never pay Jimmy. It's just an AI.
Yeah.
So today, the cost of creating these things is about $1 a minute right now, GPU time, right? That's GPU time in a GPU cluster, right? H100s. And so at $1 a minute, a movie 100 to 120 minutes is about $100, right? And that's about a millionth the cost, like I said, of a traditional Hollywood movie that's about $100 million for the same amount of time. What does that do? I mean, I don't need the Hollywood infrastructure, right? Up until now, if you want a world-class film, Hollywood has to make it. That's it, right? It's just, you're not making it with two guys in a garage. You're not making it probably in Bollywood. You're not, again, with no disrespect. I mean, you can tell when it was made in Hollywood, and you can tell when they spent $100 million. Yeah. But you tell because the quality of the imagery, the quality of the shadows, the quality of the acting is perfect. It's outstanding. What happens when AI generates all of that for us? The shadows are right. The lighting is right. I don't need lighting designers. The lighting is wherever I want it. The sun is up in the upper right. Boom, all the shadows are there for me. It's calculated. Yeah. It's just math. It's just math, right? And this is what you do. And so every single thing here has been converted to math. They're math algorithms, probably some FFTs in there too, and then back to images, right? That's what we do. And those images get better and better. If I say a GAN, I won't go through it fully, but you know what a GAN is. Yeah. And so we make those images better and better by comparing them to actual real images until you can't tell the difference. Different image, but you can't tell the difference. Can't tell which one is more realistic. And then you go on to the next frame and you do it again. in space and time, and you just keep doing it. And I have some examples here. We could actually probably share them, but I will tell you, it's unbelievable what you say. So I'll give you another example. Today, if you wanted a fly-in flight over, something in Ireland, and you'd either get a helicopter or a drone, and you'd come in and get that beautiful, beautiful, coastline, right? And you'd film that beautiful coastline for the entrance to your movie. I can generate that coastline now, that 30-second, title sequence, literally for 50 cents. And you cannot tell the difference. I don't need to hire the drone operator. I don't need to send a crew to Ireland. I don't need to edit. I don't need to do anything. I just tell AI. And if I don't like the way they edit it or the angles or something, just tell AI to edit it differently. If I can describe it, it'll do it.
So you are talking about like producing a world-class movie for $100. Now
you cannot tell the difference.
Yeah, but
story aside, I said story aside because there's good storytellers and there's bad storytellers, both in Hollywood and outside of Hollywood. If the story is good, no matter how much you paid, not paid, whatever, you will be able to produce a realistic 100 to 120 minute film quality, Hollywood film quality product for $100 from your desktop in the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay, so we are not quite there yet. And as far as I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong. We are not there yet.
It's all there. Actually, all of it is there. All the pieces are there. They haven't been put together.
Okay.
But all the pieces are there in different models, right? I can move people's lips. I can change their angles. I can put a voice on them, and I can select the voice, or I can make it my voice, and that'll automatically move their lips and do all that. I can place them in a scene, and I can create the scenes. Those are all separate pieces today. But if I wanted to put them together, they're also typically limited to about 1 or 2 minutes just because of the cost of the GPU time. But if I said I want to limit it to 2 hours, technically I can do that. There's nothing limiting me from doing that. Or what I do is I make 2 or 3 minute scenes and then put those scenes together, right?
Right. So what I'm thinking is that what you're talking about is like a scenario where I created a world-class movie, motion picture for $100 that is as good as one would create in Hollywood. Now, to me, that's quite a big leap. Even if the technology is there, I'm trying to think about what you're talking about is like, let's say there is a product out there, let's say that already allows me to do that, right? And I still think that it's going to take quite some time to get that product ready for anybody like me, for example. I don't know anything about movies.
Right. And you might not be a movie maker, or you might get inspired and say, I can create a 3-minute film that is the quality, right, in terms of images of anything that anyone could create in Hollywood with tremendous effort. So let me give you already an example. We've already seen this happen. If I said to you 3 years ago, you are going to create, you're going to be able to, in 30 seconds, 3 years from now, be able to create an image of a cat on Mars that is photographic quality, and you're going to be able to do it without spending 10,000 hours to learn Photoshop. We could do it in Photoshop. You'd say, Kevin, it's impossible. I'd have to spend the 10,000 hours. And I go, just wait 3 years. And today you can go to DALL-E 3 and say, create me a cat on Mars of photographic quality that is wearing a helmet and breathing air, and the spaceship is behind the cat. Okay. And so you would have looked at me 3 years ago and said, you're crazy. And today you'd go, well, of course I can. I just go to one of these 3 models and it makes it for me as long as I can describe it. So why can't I do that at 24 frames a second instead of 1 frame? Of course I can.
You probably can. Yeah. The question is, then how is it going to be I mean, if I take that, let's say what is state of the art today, it works well with text. So I can, for example, write an article or let AI write an article for me, like a blog article or even newspaper article. And if I prompt it correctly, I can get lot of interesting content. Usually that takes a few iterations until I get it right. And in the end, I still need to give it my personal touch, right? Now,
There are ways not that you can embed your personality, as you know. I don't have to tell you this. So we
yeah,
could get it to where it is already responding like you, but still there's value in editing, right? And you're going to go
right,
through like I do and edit some of this.
exactly. So I usually take the text and I need to kind of change it because I want it really to sound like me and to have my personal touch. Now, if we take this to movies, right? And that's where I see that. So you were talking about um, AI has the potential to replace lots of people in the industry. Now,
Oh yeah,
how are the people that are the creative people in this industry? And I believe more in that. And I'm a believer in AI augmenting what people do. It might replace some of the jobs, but
right,
if I'm thinking about the creative jobs in any industry, but in particular in this one now, how is AI going to help, like a screenwriter
right.
or a
Well,
director or an
sure, sure,
editor,
sure,
or
sure.
in
Let
actually, it's going to help them make films faster. It's going to help them make better films, right? And it's going to help them make them cheaper, right? The production cheaper as well. Now, this is what's really interesting to me, and I'd like to explore that in the next part of our conversation, if you will. So, and let's start, for example, from screenwriting, like so writing scripts, writing a script for a movie. How do you see this happening? Is I
well,
have
well,
the sense that this is
let's
already
start at the beginning.
possible now, right?
Yeah, yeah, sure. GPT-4 can write scenes, but cannot write an entire movie today. There's a whole bunch of reasons why that is, but it can write scenes.
Yeah.
But what it can do is you can say, I want to write I want to write a screenplay um, about the following topic. What might be the scenes? Please list out 20, I don't know, 50 scenes.
Right.
So it'll list the 50 scenes. Then you can go to each of those scenes and say, here are the characters, write the dialogue for this scene. So uh, it absolutely comes up with some very interesting ideas, not always the best dialogue, but interesting ideas today. And a screenwriter might use those as ideas for his own screenplay.
Mhm.
But let me look at it another way. 99+% of screenwriters never get their stuff published, never turns into a movie. They're writing screenplays, they're submitting them, there's stacks of them at Universal Studios, and they basically never get published. What happens if that screenwriter today goes, for $100, I'll just make my own movie? I don't need Sony Pictures, Universal Studios, or Paramount to make the movie for me. I can make it myself. I have a vision of what everything looks like. I've described it. A good
Mhm.
screenplay has the descriptions of the scenes already. I've
Mhm.
described this scene in New York City, this scene in San Francisco, this scene in the bedroom.
Right.
I'm just going to make it since I know what's in my head. And now they're not using anyone. They didn't use the studio system. They didn't use anyone, right? And they have a movie. Now, I didn't say it's good. I didn't say it's bad. But the 99 point plus, percent of screenwriters that never get a feature film can all have a feature film now. Where they feature it, I don't know. YouTube probably. They put it out on YouTube, as part of their
Mhm.
blog thing or as part of their
Right.
as podcast or whatever. So we're democratizing access to make the content. This is a positive thing, right? To
Mhm.
where the gatekeeper has always been Hollywood. Basically,
Right.
you didn't have a major studio in Hollywood pick up your screenplay and run with it.
Mhm.
That was it. It never saw the light of day. And there are people I know who have written many a film, and there's 20 of them sitting on their desk. They spent half their life writing films, and they never got one studio to pick up a single one of their films. Now
Mhm.
they can just make all 20 films. No one else
Okay.
needed. Okay, that's great
Okay.
for them. And ChatGPT, GPT-4, etc., other models. probably really good for screenwriters. I don't know if those models are going to write great screenplay yet, but they will over the next 2 or 3 years as they learn from screenplays that really did well versus those that didn't do well. So I think you're going to see that come along, and one could create an embedded model specifically to be really good at that and embed, 5,000 movie scripts, right? And learn from all of them and just try to get really good at movie scripts. So for example, you would know how to do that. I would know how to do that. Not everyone listening will know how to do that, but you could do that today if that's what you want, and you'd have movie GPT, right?
You could create a specialized model for that. Yeah, you could train one, fine tune it.
Specialized model, totally doable, right? Totally doable.
Right. All
Child in the room.
Right.
They do come and visit.
We have a guest, a new
yes,
guest
we
in our
do.
podcast.
Does she like movies too?
Recording. She does. She does. A little too much TV.
They all. Okay, so let's continue on. So look, would it be useful can I share a screen and show you what's happening today? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's do it. If you, oh yeah, you do. Okay, so let's look at two things. Here is a super cool thing. Share sound. Yeah, I got to do that and optimize for video. Let's make sure I've done that correctly. All right, I'm going to share. All right, you should be able to see that. Okay, that's Audrey Hepburn. Okay, but what you've got is a single picture on the left, and now we're going to animate it, okay, fully by actually guessing what the sides and angles and all might look like. Does that make sense? So we're going to have AI guess at that. Now, how can AI guess at that? AI may not have seen exactly her side, but it's seen and modeled enough other humans from every angle that it can guess what that angle probably looks like. So let's see what we do here. This is fully AI generated, all of it. Here you go.
I never knew you were the someone waiting for me. We were just kids when we fell in love, not knowing what.
Okay, look at the eyes, look at the movement, the hair, the crown, the ears, like the shoulders are moving. And AI is filling in what would have been behind her, right? Okay, look at this.
Yeah. It's amazing.
But you heard it, darling, you look.
Okay, so I'm going to stop that. We'll share something else in a second, but let's just start with that.
Wow, that was amazing. That was Audrey Hepburn singing Ned Sheeran's song, right? So I believe that she passed before Ed Sheeran composed that song. So
that number one, true, and number two, remember, all we had as input, all we had was a single photograph, and we could change the photograph and animate her singing a song she never sang, where the lips move and they form the vowels and the consonants, and you can see that form, and you can see the eyes move, and you see the shoulders move. Okay, that's all AI guessing at what that might have looked like.
Yeah.
Now let me take you to CGI territory. So the reason I want to show that is we already have the ability to animate a human simply from a picture or a made-up picture. It doesn't have to be Audrey Hepburn. It could be a picture of something made up, and animate that fully, including now walking around. We can have that person walk around and move and move their lips and all of those things. That's where the technology is today. It's improved in a year 500%. Now let me show you the best models. These are diffusion-based models. Also, this is from OpenAI. This is Sora. So this is this is a little 34-second compendium for those who haven't seen this. This is pretty amazing. So well, let's share this. One more thing to share here.
Yeah. So Sora, you're going to show what the OpenAI has on their website, or you have some access?
It's a compendium of that and some other things as well, right?
All right.
Right. So but all from Sora. So it's just so people understand who are watching this. Oh, that is what you can do now. Creating images from nothing, from noise. Okay, you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
let's think about what we saw. The humans didn't exist. The cats didn't exist. The dogs didn't exist. That scenery of that shoreline doesn't exist. Those were generated simply by typing text. I would like a drone shot of a shoreline coming around from left to right with the ocean crashing. Boom, that's what happened. Okay, think about, and that was 34 seconds. So the total GPU cost of that was about 50 cents.
Right.
50 cents. I didn't film. I had no cameras. There's no cats. I didn't need anything. So I want your viewers and listeners to think, one, what does that do to a whole lot of jobs in Hollywood?
Yeah.
I don't need a soundstage. I don't need all of that. But two, how does it empower other creators, perhaps millions and billions of new filmmakers that were never able to make a film before because it was $100 million, but now it's $100. I'm empowering people all over the world to make immense output like that.
So, but trying to summarize this, or I'm probably going to oversimplify it, but let's say I want to write a movie. So I start with screenwriting. I start by writing a script, and I use tools to help me do that. Generative AI, GPT-like models tuned for that. So now I have my script, and I am now going to decide, okay, I'm going to use these characters. So I'm probably going to work on that and say, okay, these are the characters that I want to use, because I might want to reuse them. I don't know. So I probably would like to isolate that. And based on the description of the characters in my script, in my screenplay, I'm going to decide, or I'm going to have another tool generating the characters for me. And then I'm going to say,
set of tools, or they might be merged. It might look like one tool to you, but it's lots of different models. You know, but or it might come down to one model eventually. But to the outside, you should be able to either come up with a storyline and have it write the script, or you're going to write the script yourself, and you're going to input, Final Draft, which is a script writing tool, right? And from your descriptions of the scenes, it'll automatically start generating scenes, generating characters. Those characters will talk to your script. And my point of showing you that is that pretty much all the pieces we need are now here. They're not weaved together in the right way, but all the pieces are around. Not yet. Very soon. Very soon. And so this is a game changer for creators. A game changer. Every creator, everyone who visions themselves as a creator, everyone who writes scripts or writes storylines will be able to make a 3-minute movie, a 30-minute movie, a 2-hour movie, a 10-hour movie.
Whatever, a series, even a TV series.
Even a TV series. And it won't be the purview of Hollywood. And you won't need the soundstage. You don't need the infrastructure they built. The infrastructure they built is serious infrastructure. There's a guy that was about to sign off on an $800 million brand new studio set of sound stages. And when he saw some of this, stopped and said, I don't think I'll ever need a sound stage again.
Okay. It's probably true. So do you think there's still, so before I go to this next question, so you've got screenwriting, you've got let's say you want to have characters. Let's say you want to create a movie, but you want to have the possibility of reusing the characters. So you've got the characters, you've got the actors and actresses, whatever that you use. Then you generate.
I might have filmed them, but I might not have filmed them. I might have generated them.
Right. So you generate the scenes of the movie using, I don't know, real characters, pictures of real people, or generated
or
characters.
not.
It doesn't really matter.
Fully generated
or mixed.
Absolutely.
It's probably going to be mixed as well. And then what? So you have your movie, and what about post-production? Is AI going to help there too?
Yeah. So if I created all my scenes to the script, to the descriptions in the script, I may already have my movie, right? I've created all the scenes. All I have to do is put them together. I
Right.
might not like some of the scenes. I might want to have a different angle. It's very easy to say to AI, I want an angle from the right. I want an angle from the left. I want a two shot. I want to go back and forth. I want an over the shoulder shot, right? Very easy to tell AI that, and it'll do it. So editors, of which I am one, I'm a Final Cut Pro person, and I know how to do that in Final Cut Pro. I'll have, whatever. I might have 12 streams of camera footage, and I'm going to flip back and forth between the ones. And you have to be, you have to have 10,000 hours in Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere or whatever you're using, right? To be good at it, to go, okay, I know how to move here, and then I'm going to go to this angle, and I'm going to come back to this angle, and it might have all been shot in multiple scenes at multiple times, and I'm going to put those together, right? And make them look seamless. AI will just do that. I don't need an editing tool. I'm saying AI. Randomly, every 8 to 12 seconds, flip between the left and right view, and it'll just do it. I'll say, move that camera angle by 5 degrees. It'll do it. And so I've also democratized editing. Today, editing is clearly an art. It's your eyes and it's the experience, but it's also knowing how to use the tools, which are very, I don't want to say very difficult, but it's, it's not iMovie, right? It's much more complex than that. And so I don't need to use the tool anymore. Just like Photoshop has now integrated Adobe and Photoshop, all kinds of Gen AI. And I can say, add a UFO, boom, move it to the left, boom. Like, I don't have to do that anymore and get the edges right and lay it in there right and make it look seamless. It does it for me, right? So I just need to know how to ask it, but I don't need to do it anymore. My 10,000 hours went to like 2 hours. Right? I've democratized access to that. How about composition for for film? Well, what you just heard was not composed by AI, but there are versions that are very similar to that are composed by AI. And so I can just have AI literally generate all the music for the film based on this genre. It will do it. So I don't have to be a musician anymore. And I want a full orchestra. No, I want a rock band. No, I just want guitar. I want whatever. Just describe it. It'll go make it, right? Because it's learned from millions of other things that it heard. This is pretty amazing. So we're democratizing access to every piece of filmmaking, every single thing, right? The screenwriter is now the director. They always thought they were the director anyway, but nobody would ever hire him as the director. And now whatever was in their mind is going on screen. I don't know if it's good or bad. I don't know if they're the next Hitchcock. Doesn't matter, right? They can make what they want. And by the way, if nobody likes it for $100 more, they can make it again.
Yeah, it's true. So there's two thoughts that come to mind. One is it's probably the similar phenomena to what's been happening with YouTube content anyway, and podcasts and all. Is that are we going to be flooded with a bunch of movies, and there's going to be so many movies, so much content, and this is already happening partially with streaming and all.
What is it? 15 million hours are uploaded to YouTube every minute, or some crazy thing, right? Or every day. Yeah, it's it's so much content, no human could ever see it all.
And even if you think about, I don't know, services like Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever, video, like the amount of series that are being created, and even movies that don't get to the theater, that just go online immediately, and that it's become already now it's kind of overwhelming a bit, the amount of content that there is. And I sit sometimes with my wife, okay, what are we going to watch tonight? And we spend more time looking for what we're going to watch than
it's
actually
true for all of us.
It.
We spend half an hour looking for it, finally turn the thing off. There's too much. just whether it's Netflix or Apple TV or whatever, it's overwhelming, right? By the way, not only is it overwhelming,
worse.
Most of it is terrible. So I don't want to see that. 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 It's like, make something I want to see.
So isn't this going to ruin this kind of entertainment?
Well, okay.
Even more?
Hang on. Did all the creators on YouTube ruin YouTube? No. We'd say they added to our life, because there's very interesting stuff I can go find there every day. This podcast will be on YouTube, right?
It will, yeah.
Okay. Did you ruin YouTube?
Well, I don't think so.
No, right.
I
So
don't believe so. Otherwise, I would stop doing it.
you added to the
I
diversity of content on YouTube, and you
It's
will find
true.
an audience in that content.
Yeah, and we do have a little audience. We do have audience people interested in our content. So in that sense, it is adding value because people are watching it and listening
Exactly.
to it. And
Exactly.
so the other thing that I was thinking was, do you know Taleb, of the writer that wrote a few books? He's a skeptic, he's a skepticist, and he made a post on Twitter now called X, saying that GPT or Chat GPT is trained with data from the internet. Is trained
Of course,
with
yes.
content from the internet,
Humans created. Yeah.
and now that is being used to generate content, which is going in the internet. And then the
Yes.
next version of ChatGPT is going to be trained on content generated by itself,
That's right. That's
and
right.
that they call that a self-licking lollipop, and
Yeah. It's
which
a
is quite
feedback
funny.
loop. It's a
and
feedback loop. There,
and
I mean,
it is an issue, right? Is this also
it's
going
an
to
issue that
happen?
more and more of our content will be generated with the help of generative AI. And here's the problem with that is that the great bell curve of human intuition and human output will start to come more and more and more to the middle because it'll start to normalize because Gen AI, and I'll give you an example. It's like
Yeah,
Gen AI wants to generate something in the middle unless you tell it otherwise. So
right.
if I go to Gen AI, some people get mad I say this, but it's true. You should know. If you just go to most visual generators today and you say, draw me the perfect model, female model, walking down a runway, modeling the latest outfit in New York City, whatever it is. She's going to be impossibly thin, an impossible figure, impossibly tall, and probably blonde. Just why? Because that's right dead center in what we've done with models for 100 years, right?
Yeah.
At least in the United States. And that isn't fair to everyone else of every other body type and every other hair color and everything else. But that is the dead center. And so if you're not smart enough to say, and I don't want it to look like the average, I want something that is not average at all. Okay. So if you ask that, it'll go do it. But if you just say, hey, I need a picture of a model, boom, you get that. And you stick it on the web. Another person gets that, sticks it on the web. So more and more and more comes to the center because the center of this bell curve gets really, really high now, gets pointed, right? And the edges start to disappear because the edges were generally generated by humans. And models want to generate towards the center of the model. That's a built-in bias. It's not a good or bad bias. It's just a built-in bias towards the average.
So what's going to happen to movies then? Are they going to become more and more all the same? Or is this?
Well, I don't know. So let's
mean,
look at it this way. If I ask generative AI to write scripts for me, write the average script that will be a hit, they'll all start to look the same.
Yeah.
Boy finds girl, boy loses girl, boy finds her again, or something like that, right? Doesn't have to be that, but you get the point. That's a very typical storyline in these things. But I think instead we're going to find a slew of creators. And so when we democratized podcasting, we didn't find everyone doing the same podcast. In fact, what we found is thousands and thousands and thousands of different podcasts, all with a different angle, even in the same technology.
Right.
And so I think what we're going to find is people who fancy themselves as screenwriters, some really are and some aren't, generating their own content now because they are writers. Some people will say, I don't know how to be a screenwriter. I'm going to ask Gen AI to generate a story for me. A lot of those stories are going to start to look mundane and the same. But I don't think we'll be attracted to those stories. I think we'll be attracted to the 99% of stories that humans never got published in a film because nobody would ever write the $100 million check.
Right.
And this is good. What's bad? A lot of people out of work. The entire Hollywood, if I'm looking out 10 years, I think the entire Hollywood establishment, begins to fall apart. How do you continue to afford to heat and cool and everything else sound stages when they're not being used? You don't. You sell that off for real estate. You go, I'm in the middle of LA. I don't need this anymore. That's a relic of 100 years ago because we needed to take light and photons into a lens. And now I don't need light in a lens. I have images that I can create out of nothing. I don't need any of that.
There's probably still going to be a place for get more classic type of movie making, but it's just going to be much smaller, like a bit like theater, right? Like what happened to theater, that there was only theater 200 years ago, right? There was no
Right. That's
movies, there
right.
was no, and now, well, movies took over. Theater is just a niche, and it still exists. It's probably still growing, but it's a niche. It's not
Hey,
mainstream anymore,
actually,
and
theater isn't
probably
growing. That's another story. Theater
is
isn't
not.
growing
Okay.
because post-COVID, everybody learned to have, 20 streaming channels at home and they're
Yeah,
overwhelmed with content. But here's
I forgot
another
about that.
example.
But it was at
Okay,
least up until COVID.
look, for
Yeah.
for thousands of years, music could only be enjoyed in person. You went to see the guitar player or the lute
Yeah.
player at the time. That's all there was, right? There was no
Yeah.
other choice. I'm going to go see the lute player because there was no way to hear the lute player at home. So you went to see the lute player along with 100 of your friends or whatever it was. And then a miracle happened. We had recorded music. We had the LP. We had wire before that, but it
Yeah.
wasn't highly distributed. And then we had the LP. And all of a sudden, a piece of vinyl that could be made for pennies could bring music to your home
Yeah.
with a Victrola and a big, horn on it, right? That would amplify the little undulations on the record. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, recorded music grew. Where actually performing music actually shrank for quite a bit of time. And the reason is the music industry was making a killing, frankly, selling LPs and then later CDs.
Mhm.
And that became the mainstay of everybody. In fact, all you wanted to do is get your next album out because you could make money, right? You made money on your album. That's how you made millions of dollars. You might do a tour once in a while because the record company say, hey, you got to do a tour to, and every 5 years the band would go out and tour. They might make some money, but they made all their money on records, right? Michael Jackson, that album sold 10, 20, 30, 100 million copies. Life's good, right?
Right. That changed a bit though. No.
Yeah. So
It's
so there's that. And then and then came the internet, and then came streaming, and then everybody gets a $300 check from Spotify instead of making hundreds of millions of dollars. So
right.
So what do? You go back on tour, and now everyone wants to see artists live because streaming music, you can get anything you want. You don't have to buy it. It doesn't really cost you anything. It's a small subscription. And so the whole thing has shifted. And now there's great value in seeing Taylor Swift live, $1.6 billion of value. She made more money in a year than virtually any artist has ever made in their lifetime. And it was all on tour. It was all on tour.
And how does that apply to movies again? So if people are not going to, let's say, to the theater anymore, or if how are artists going to make money, if at all, and how is this industry going to make money now?
Well, it's a great question. First of all, there's going to be a question of actors as stars, right? Will we have actors as stars? Will we have as many? By the way, we have far less today than we had in the 50s in the height of Hollywood. There were lots of actors that were stars. Today, you can name a handful, maybe 6 or 8 or 10, but you're not going to name 50 anymore or 100.
Why is that?
And there's a lot of reasons for that. The studio system broke up, and it's very expensive, and sort of all of those things. But what's super interesting is that, actors aside, will people get overwhelmed by YouTube-like content? Everybody's making a 2-hour movie, right? And lots of them suck. And actually want to see sort of the Hollywood thing, right? We're sort of hoping this way with movie theaters. During COVID, movie theaters shut down. When they open back up, hardly anyone goes. It's way down in revenue. But now when we do go, it's a very special thing, right? I mean, I go only for specific movies that I want to see on a huge screen.
Right.
Because now we've got pretty good screens at home, right? And we've got other things happening, like the
good sound,
like the Apple AR VR glasses that you really have a true 3-dimensional 84-foot screen inside those glasses.
Right.
How's that going to affect going to the movie theater, right? All of these technologies impact other things. So we've seen music come full circle. I don't know if we'll see movies come full circle because we're not even into it yet, and we're guessing what's going to happen. For music, we've had 20 years of the internet impacting it, and it finally came around to it's all about live performances if you want to make money, right? Which is where it started. It's where it started. And so the entire recorded music age of making money in recorded music was about 100 years. By the way, the entire age of making money on print newspapers, it's about 100 years. It was a good 100-year run. Right now, nobody makes money on printing newspapers, right? It was a great 100-year run, and then it was over. Not every business lasts forever. And 100 years is a very long time.
Yeah, it is.
Hold it. Photographic pictures, right? Kodak, take a picture with film, okay? Had a great 100-year run also. And then digital came along. And it was just more convenient. And now there's a little bit, people want to take Polaroids and they want to take film, and it's kind of this nostalgic thing. But basically, it was a 100-year run.
Yeah. So does it apply to the movie industry? And we are getting close to the end of our episode. Does the same concept apply? So you hear often that, well, people are afraid of being replaced by AI. Some people say that, well, you probably are not going to be replaced by AI, but you are going to be replaced by somebody that uses AI.
That's right.
Is this also going to apply in the movie industry?
Well,
probably some jobs will
for
disappear.
sure, yes. The big question is, if it doesn't cost $100 million to make a movie, and therefore you can sell them to the public for $500 million, right? If all of a sudden it costs $100 to make a movie, and someone is super happy to sell that artwork for $3,000, $5,000, I don't know. You know, what does that do to the value equation? Right? You cannot support an entire industry when movies sell for $5,000. You know, it doesn't work, right? There's not enough money in it to support the 3,000 people that traditionally work on a film, when now you have one person in their basement work on a film. Yeah. You know, whether or not it's a good film or a bad film. The point is how do you compete with that kind of content generation? A TV show, an episode today on average costs $2 to $3 million an episode, sometimes $5, sometimes even $100 million. It's crazy, right? But $2-3 million to do a 30-minute episode. $3 million to do a 30-minute episode of television. What happens when I can do 30-minute episodes of television quality, for $30?
$50.
Yeah, $50, $30, $20. All of a sudden, there's going to be a flood of content. If we're out 5 years from now, an immense flood of content. Who wins? YouTube wins, because it'll all be on YouTube, right? They own that. Maybe some of it on Vimeo or something, but mostly YouTube. How many podcasts? How many podcasts have more than I'm going to say, 1,000 views a week? Not many. In fact, 99% have less than 1,000 a week. But 1% have millions a week. Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast. It's, what is it, 64 million a month or something? Some incredible number of views every month. Incredible number of views. And, and he is making tens of millions of dollars, if not $100 million. He's a podcaster. Just somehow the thing took off. We don't know why. We hope yours takes off just as much. It will now, because we talked about Hollywood.
For sure.
This will clearly be the most popular episode. But I think we can end with this sort of is, if we're looking out 5 to 10 years, even 5 years, we're going to democratize the ability to make film. High quality films, right? We're going to democratize the ability to do that. Anyone will be able to do them. Anyone will be able to distribute them for basically $0. Most of them will be watched 5 times, but some of them will be watched millions of times. And those people are going to make their own film studio called Kevin's Film Studio and just keep putting product out there. And we're going to want to go see that. And so what does that do to the old film studios? Well, what did it do to the old newspapers? It was a bad situation, right? What did it do to Kodak? It was a bad situation. So I think when you undermine the basic business model of I must distribute news on newsprint every morning to someone's house, and all of a sudden I just get it online, it destroys the entire infrastructure that supported you. Right? Printing presses and people who ran the printing presses and dozens of reporters, and the whole thing goes away. And all of a sudden people went from I'm willing to pay a lot for news to it's free on the web.
Right. So it's not really free. You have to watch a lot of ads, and the content, the quality has gone down.
But we're going to go, of course it has. But there's also good quality. I mean, and we know where to look for good quality. So it's reasonable to say, that we're going to see the same thing happen in the film industry, is that lots of people will lose their jobs. a lot of people, a lot of the infrastructure is no longer needed, and people are going to have to cut back on those costs. A lot of the ways we film with cameras and lighting, and we're not going to do that anymore. We're just going to, digitally create it. And so it's going to be a complete upheaval. And in 5 years, there'll be tons of content made by people like yourself that we'll either decide to watch or not watch.
Well, or even people who, like, I used to be a camera person, they don't need me anymore. Well, actually,
Right.
I'm going to go and start making movies myself.
That's right. Got to do
Because
something.
I know this, because I know how to make movies. I just couldn't afford to produce one myself. Now I can.
That's right. Couldn't afford to do it before. So I think it's fascinating, and it's a fascinating time.
You're gonna have like movie production startups, right? That
maybe 100,000 of them that have two people in them.
That have like 2 or 3 people, a handful of people, and just create content very fast. It will start disrupting that industry enormously.
5 years from now, when I'm back on your show, we're going to look at this and you're going to, Kevin, I don't always call it right, but I can see this one because I do spend time making films. In fact, I made one of the first films that was a mix of one of the early films. There was a mix of reality and completely 100% generated backgrounds that people were in the sets. All the sets were generated digitally.
What was that? What was that?
Called movie? Estella Scrooge. You can get it online. Estella. E. It starts with an E. Estella Scrooge.
Estella Scrooge. Okay.
Yes, it's the great granddaughter of Ebenezer Scrooge. And we had all these stars, and we wanted to film during COVID, and we were not allowed to have more than one person in the room at the time. So we did it all on green screens, filmed one person at a time, and then put them all together digitally, and created all of the hotel they're in, the offices that they're in, was all created artificially, digitally with digital models. And that was
look it up.
2020. So you can go look at it, and it's a very Dickens kind of feel. Sorry, not Dickens, but like Charles Dickens. But people were surprised that we could do that. Now that's almost 4 years ago now. And so I was involved in that project. I launched that project. I was the executive producer on that project. I had to convince the director we could do it. The director said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Oh, we'll put everyone together digitally, and we'll just generate the backgrounds out of 3D models." He said, "That's impossible." So I did some demos and showed him, and he goes, "They're singing. They're looking at each other, but they were never in the same place together. How did you do that?" I said, "Well, here's how you do it." He says, "We have to do this. We can make this movie." So I was an early adopter of this concept that you could indeed do this and have a hit and have people love it. And that film has done really well in the streaming world.
All right. Thank you, Kevin, for being with us today. It was a pleasure. I think we could keep going for hours. This is a very interesting, very exciting topic. Thank you for listening and for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to give us a like and to follow or subscribe our channel. If you are on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, just follow us, and see you again soon.
Thank you.